Chapter 5 Reunions. The last pony's gun glinted in the lantern light. Pitt shrunk away from her, a trembling mess, as he saw the bar about to collapse before his and his brother's eyes. The irate patrons, too angry or buzzed to think rationally, marched towards the mare and her weapon without hesitation. Before anything exploded, the double doors flew wide with a flurry of white snow and feathers. Golden beaks, glinting goggles, and razor-sharp talons lit the room, followed by a cackling voice. "Whoa-ho-ho! What's all the commotion about? Is there some trouble in my favorite watering hole? Huh? Huh? Pitt, what gives?" Pitt, sweating bullets, gave the pony a sideways glance before murmuring under his breath,
"Trouble always comes to you, huh?"
Clearing his throat, he leaped over the bar and spread his monkey arms wide with a voice of forced cheerfulness.
"Well, if it isn't the Golden Gang, my favorite customers ever. Whoop!"
He wheezed, as he was forced into a half-Nelson in one of the griffin's feathery grasp.
Why, we're all one happy family today, aren't we?
Abso-positivo-lutely, Piddle pal. 'Cause if we weren't a happy family, I might have to clean shop. You wouldn't like me doing that, would ya? I mean, it is your shop, after all.
I would certainly hope so. Oh, and my brothers too. The smart ones, at least.
Right. Like I said, it's your shop. Everyone calm down, take it easy. The head griffin ruffled the hair around Pitt's bald spot, and grinned at the group as she waved her majestic wings and sauntered across the hazy interior on all fours. It's been a long and crazy week of navigating the wastelands. Take a chill pill and enjoy your drinks. The Golden Gang's here to party like it's the Third Age all over again. Don't stop the rum, barkeep. By this time, the pony had retracted her rifle, sheathed it, and slumped herself lethargically against the bar. The angry fire in her eyes had long sizzled out. She watched with a forlorn breath as the blunt and wincing ogre struggled to get up. His friends lifted their buddy from a pile of smoldering splinters, leading him, limping, towards the den's half-hearted excuse for a lavatory. They glanced back over their thick shoulders and frowned at the Pegasus, muttering a crazy assortment of obscenities her way. The other patrons were likewise glaring at her, but, under the sudden beaks of the Golden Gang, they reluctantly returned to their tables. A long breath escaped the mare's lips. She glanced down at the bar counter, at a leather map that Pitt had rolled out. There was still a scratchy impression left in the dead center of the illustrated brown waste, from where the baboon had excitedly marked out the infamous coordinates of the green flame. A crown of platinum feathers blocked the image of the map. Looking up, the pony found herself staring into the grinning beak of a tall, muscular griffin. Like her 6 other companions, the half-avian creature sported a leather-brown bomber jacket splayed over with the totems of her fallen enemies, bounties that she and her loyal gang of feathered kin had expertly chased down. Nobody dared question their skill or tactful mercilessness. They were the esteemed bounty hunters of the equestrian wastes, the mavericks of the twilight. They were the Golden Gang, and this towering figure looming in front of the pony with a swagger and a grin was the squadron's self-appointed leader. Well, 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 she chuckled, a pair of silver goggles glinting in the lantern light. If you ain't the last pony on Earth, why is it that I'm always stumbling in on you when you're about to have your head ripped off by all things that live and breathe? The pony exhaled long and hard, suddenly staring at the floor as she muttered, "Then maybe you shouldn't bother with stumbling, Gilda." Ho ho ho! A little spitfire tonight, aren't we? The adult griffin grabbed a random mug from a dizzy patron, backhanded him to the floor the moment he protested, and took a big swig. After gulping, Gilda exhaled, wiping her beak, and leaned with her back against the bar besides the pony. I've known you to take on trolls, harpies, and goddess knows how many stormfronts to get what you need for your clients. But tossing around ogres 3 times your size in a bar crowded with drunken scallywags? Now that's just silly, Harmony. My name's not... The pony began, remembered who she was talking to, and deflatedly murmured, "Whatever." Why so glum, kiddo? With a single sharp talon, Gilda raised her silver goggles to her head crest. An amused pair of amber eyes winked down at the last pony. You're alive, aren't you? For what it's worth. Well, that's all that matters, isn't it? She suddenly leaned in, forcing the blinking pony's torso into an iron-wrought side hug. For you, that is. Heck, if I died, the golden mantle would just go to Stowe. But who would the prancing mantle go to if you bit the oats? Whoops, sorry, old expression. Tough thing to kick. But hey, you get the idea. I think... Gilda pinched the brown mare's cheek, her claws nearly breaking the mare's skin. You're so adorable when you're all confused in the head. That's always been one of my guilty pleasures about your kind. Y'all could be so gosh darn cute at the wrong moments, especially when you got angry. She cleared her feathery throat. If Equestria hadn't got the burn, I think all the ponies would have gone extinct from always shoving their hooves in their mouths. I just came here to do business, Gilda. And look where it got you. Seriously, Harmony. At this rate, you'll be skinned and mounted in an exhibit by next Stormfront. You gotta learn how to chill and know your role, girl. In the meantime, she murmured, nonchalantly turning her gaze to scan the ceiling. Her hug of the pony tightened suggestively. I should remind you of how important it is that you've always got good old Gilda to cover your flank. This place is filled to the brim with nasty no-goods, who have all these cockamamie reasons to detest the existence of a sweet, innocent pony like you. You know, I can't always barge in at moments just like now, but you can still have the gang's protection at other times. Gilda's voice oozed. Meanwhile, a prehensile lion's tail roped up from behind the Pegasus and tightened mercilessly around the mare's neck. If you're smart. The pony's scarlet eyes darted towards the living noose ensnaring her. Caught between the bar, Gilda's tail, Gilda's talon, and Gilda's cold shoulder, the pony wilted from deep inside herself. Unenthusiastically, she reached into her saddlebag and produced a pouch of silver, all the strips she still had left from Gilliam's payment for the Phoenix Fire. She cast a look up at her griffin friend, and the amber glint that returned was colder than an iceberg. Without a word, the Pegasus dropped the strips into Gilda's other talon, turning her head to erase the silver bars from her mind. The Golden Gang leader brightened immediately. Clever girl, she beamed, then produced a shrill whistle. Another griffin about Gilda's height flapped over. Hey, Stowe, be true to your name and stow these away into the vault on board the Talon, will ya? Stowe was a stone-gray feathered griffin, whose beak resembled a perpetually grimacing mask. A scar ran over her left eye, and her jacket was laced with finger bones belonging to several questionable species. Taking the silver, she launched a glare past Gilda and hissed at the pony. You better not be holding out on us, blank flank, or I'll gut you in places you never knew you had. Stowe! Shove off or shove it! Gilda snapped, kicking a lower foot hard into her second-in-command's gut. This is my good friend you're barking at, you overgrown cockatoo. I don't see why you waste your frickin' time, Stowe spat, gave the pony a lasting snarl, and stomped off. If you love the glue stick so much, boss, just marry it already. Yeah, and we'll mount the wedding cake with your gizzard, you loudmouth. Take a hike. Gilda frowned, then chuckled helplessly as she patted the pony's shoulder. Pfft, blank flank. Beats the heck out of me where that psychopath gets her insults. Shoot, she could have gotten it from me. I had loads of fun hanging out with ponies back in the day. But you know that, Harmony. And you know I'd never insult the hoofed pipsqueaks, even if they were frickin' lamos from time to time. But hey, that's the checks and balances, right? Right. The pony sighed, stretching her saddlebags wider over her unmarked brown coat in an absent-minded gesture of yesteryear. Whatever you say, Gilda. Hey, barkeep! Gilda raised a talon as she swiveled around towards the counter. 2 rum and coconuts, on the double. The pony droned. I don't drink. Kiss my tail feathers. Gilda stuck a tongue out. With me, you will. If you're so concerned with my protection, the pony sneered at her, you will let me pilot the Harmony sober. Fine, you win. Who am I to argue, huh? Gilda snickered, rhythmically rapping her talon fingers against the bar while smirking at her friend. These are your last days, not mine. Guess you're entitled to live out your way of life if you want to, huh? I guess. Well, better get it straight, girl. I mean, it's your blood, right? She smirked and pointed. One of the things I always found quirky about ponies is they constantly pigeonhole themselves into doing one particular thing in life. Seriously, I never understood your society, even when it was still standing. It was like a freaking caste system. Remind me, what was the name of those tattoo thingies on your butts that y'all got so bent out of shape over? The pony snorted. Cutie marks. Gilda pounded the counter with her fist and covered her cackling face until a tear or two shed from her squinting amber eyes. Oh, whew. Wait, you're serious? Why wouldn't I be? You ponies actually bent your entire civilization around social strata called cutie marks? Pfft, I've heard some pretty sissy things back in my day, but this takes the cake. Heck, no wonder your kingdom friggin' exploded. 2 mugs were deposited in front of the griffin. Gilda gladly swooped one up, took a swig, belched, and smiled warmly. But not all of you were so namby-pamby. Why, a better part of my sprightly days were spent flying with the best of y'all. The Golden Gang leader exhaled in a sudden softness, choosing strategically to lower her pilot's goggles over her eyes. If it isn't the darnest thing that you're a Pegasus, 'cause those were always my favorites, the winged ponies. While the unicorns were all sewing dresses and the dirt ponies shoving plows, it was the Pegasi who really showed Equestria a thing or two about being awesome. They burned paths in the sky that mark the mist of twilight even to this day. If you squint at the swirling ashes just right after a storm front's cleared, you can see their wing trails still there. Friggin' sky horses. They would have made a good home in this upside-down world we call the Wastes. She took another guzzling sip, breathed, and squinted the pony's way. Maybe that's why you fought the Grim Reaper for as long as you have, eh, kiddo? Don't be silly, the pony murmured, then gave the griffin a postcard smile. It's all because of your expert protection. And don't you forget it! The Golden Gang leader pointed a talon, down the last of her mug, belched, and clasped the second one. This time, Gilda lingered with the drink at the edge of her beak, her silver goggles fogging briefly in the den's hazy light. You were young, kid. Too dang young if you ask me. But heck, those are the cards fate dealt. I knew a Pegasus or two who would have done even better than you if they were in your place, who wouldn't have needed protection, who would have done just fine, without me. Her feathers ruffled as she gulped hard, this time at the air. Just one. I remember just one Pegasus, come to think of it. The pony's brow withered as she breathed towards the floor. I remember her too, Gilda. It took several seconds of silence before she realized how identically frozen the both of them were. The haze settled between their cold bodies, like mist in the twilight air outside. Clearing her throat, the pony lowered her goggles over moist eyes and stepped away from the bar. Well, thanks for everything. I've bothered Pit long enough. It's time that I headed out. She trotted off. For a moment there, she imagined she was in the clear. But then Gilda's voice called out. Hey, Harmony, before you walk out on the gang and I... The pony stopped in her hooves. She turned and glanced over her flank. Gilda smirked, her avian head cocked to the side. I thought I'd mention that Stowe, the girls, and I ran into a friend of yours recently. A friend? You do remember who you're talking to, right? Heh, some toxic-lunged chipmunk named Bruce. Talks like there's marshmallows in his mouth. We did a little, business with him the other day. Did he mention that? The pony stared fixedly at her. She replied, I haven't heard anything of the sort. Yeah, well, the little scamp gets around. Not as much as you, of course, but when Stowe's scarred face freaked him out, he suddenly went on and on about some crazy nonsense. What kind of nonsense? Gilda sipped her mug, gulped, then uttered, something about green flame. Plumes of it, shooting up in random places all across the wastelands. From what I hear, the crud's really valuable. Like, you might as well have a leprechaun piss gold right in a jar for you. Ha! She gave another sip while a crest feather atop her forehead rose. You wouldn't happen to have seen this sort of stuff in your travels, huh? Seems like something that'd be right up your alley. The Pegasus looked Gilda's way. Her goggles shielded the griffin from seeing her eyes dart from the Golden Gang leader to the leather map left on the bar counter, and back. I will let you know if I hear anything, Gilda. She smiled briefly and waved a hoof. It's the least I can do for my best protector. Gilda saluted back. Dang straight, kiddo. Have a safe flight, and don't be picking fights with ogres, you hear? Right. The pony turned and trotted out, and muttered under her breath, Ogres. The pony pulled the lever once, twice, thrice. Finally, in a deep hum, the signal lit up. The fresh flamestone burned prismatically into the 7 lenses as the artificial rainbow surged high into the twilight, 10 times brighter than before. It was a dozen hours since her venture to the MODD. The pony had returned to the plateau for a regular lighting of the spectrum, but as she trotted back from the site, breathing heavily from the physical effort of forcing life into the machine, her expression waned into a wilting grimace. As amazingly bright as the well-paid-for effect was, it somehow seemed dimmer. Perhaps it was the creaking noise of the chains moored to the hovering Harmony overhead. Perhaps it was the harsh flurry of snow that dipped surprisingly low for that moment of time between storm fronts. Perhaps it was the taste of blood that resurfaced in the Pegasus's bruised mouth. Something was distracting her, so that after 10 minutes of staring, she realized that her gaze was fixed on one color of the spectrum, and one color alone. The green band. She exhaled in a gust of frustration. The multiple mishaps of her brief visit to the MODD bled down through a curtain of numbness to pinprick her all over. She kicked at the stony earth, and a few clumps of powder splashed unexcitingly across a rusted metal barricade or two, mocking her lonely ire. The permeating silence of the abandoned plateau prophesied to her yet another fruitless night of guarding an unseen spotlight, so that she wondered if the only thing a rainbow dared to dance for was the creature that conjured the spectral band in the first place. Everything the pony struggled and suffered for, the strips and the flamestones and the lighting rig, all paled to the bone, white melace, all except for one color. It was the one color that she suddenly refused to look at, the one color that she hated, because she knew beneath all her pathetically collapsible layers of skin that she was afraid of it. It's not worth it, the last pony spoke directly to herself, something she hadn't done in years. The green flame isn't worth going back there. She clutched the rifle to her chest in what briefly looked like an infantile hug, before she rolled her scarlet eyes, slid her goggles down, and climbed lethargically up the guard tower, where she knew she would sit for several hours, waiting for nothing. Long after, in the gently swaying haze of the Harmony's upper cabin, the Pegasus was lying on her hammock, chest first, her head swimming in the rhythmic lulls of Octavia's strings. Before her, bathed in golden lamplight, the pages of Princess Celestia's diary spread wide, their ivory surfaces lilting under mighty golden penstrokes of a goddess long gone. The last pony dutifully read and reread the same silkily scribed words as she had so many times before, committing the holy paragraphs to memory, turning them over in her mind, allowing the eloquent passages to sweep her away from the flurrying gray mist outside the airship's portholes. Halfway through the habitual read, a rough gust of turbulence struck the Harmony. The vessel harmlessly buckled for the briefest of seconds, and, in the ensuing jolt, Octavia's record momentarily skipped with an offensive scratching sound. It was enough to snap the marrow of her umpteenth perusal of the princess's journal, so that her eyes blinked and refocused squarely on one particular passage that suddenly stood out from the rest. It was an entry dated from halfway through the middle of the Third Age, describing the death of the last noble member of the Honeytail clan, an aristocratic family of unicorns whose great ancestors several generations before were loyalists to the Lunar Empire, having been given pardon by Princess Celestia following the banishment of Nightmare Moon. For several centuries, the Honeytail household had lived within the sacred protection of the celestial estate, barred off from the rest of the equestrian population, many of whom were descendants of brave soldiers who died wastefully at the hooves of the Lunar Empire, and who wanted nothing more than to strike vengeance at the Honeytail clan for so much bad blood built up over the years. The Honeytails were satisfied to stay within the confines of Princess Celestia's domain, and on account of their fear and hesitance, they died out as a hemophiliac strain of inbreds, fading into nothingness with little more than a passive epithet from their forgiving queen in a journal that only one lone Pegasus would read after the apocalypse had long come and gone. The pony's scarlet eyes wandered across the ever-familiar bulkheads of the Harmony, across the windows stained with the repetitious cyclones of snow, like her countless days were repetitious, bouncing back and forth between scavenging jobs while dodging murderers and monsters, and only randomly communing with a flying squirrel that leached off her, a monkey that swindled her, and a griffin that drove an invisible knife into her heart and twisted it. Everything about her existence was like a flake of ash, lost in the twirling winds, disguising itself with the faux self-importance of a steam-powered zeppelin armed to the teeth with sacrilegious runestones. She was the last pony, and if this was living, she wasn't doing a very good job of it. The mare briefly remembered what it meant to take chances before chances took her, what it meant to go for the gold before succumbing to a life that settled for silver, and what it meant to fight gravity long before her wings ever paid heed to her audacity. She never asked for Princess Celestia's protection before the cataclysm, and she sure as blazes didn't ask for Gilda's after it. The young mare clasped the royal book closed. Bolting out of the hammock, she slapped the record player off, yanked a scroll from her workbench, and practically leaped into the cockpit seat. Unfurling the map, she clasped the compass in her teeth and charted the distance between her present location and the dead center of the equestrian wastelands. Chiefly the coordinates 105, 32, 10. As soon as she mentally prepared the bearings in her head, she snapped the map closed, spat the compass out, and sneered into the stuffy air. No pony lives forever. Isn't that right, princess? She grasped her goggles, slid them over her eyes, and yanked hard on the levers, banking the Harmony port side and veering the craft swiftly southward. It was several dozens of hours later when the Harmony finally touched down, and when it had finished mooring, the landscape beneath it couldn't have been a ghostlier sight. Here in the deepest valley of Equestria, the snow flurries blew savagely across the landscape, like an ivory sandstorm. Black stalks of petrified glass shot forth from the scorched earth in obsidian daggers, making it a tough feat in and of itself for the Pegasus to land. Still, she descended bravely, and with a final flap of her wings, the pony set hoof down on holy ground. As soon as she landed, a deep shudder left her, as if she was giving up the ghost in her shell to rejoin this deathly graveyard. She stared with chattering teeth, her snout bravely piercing the howling winds. Try as she might to eye the northern horizon, nothing could be seen beyond 5 meters distance. All she knew was that this was the last hilltop before the northern dip where Pitt's coordinates pointed her. Beyond the sloping terrain was foreboding obscurity, and it was about to brush bleeding elbows with the horrible shadows of her long-forsaken memories. With a strong gulp, the pony stood straight and tall, feeling the weight of her leather armor, saddlebags, rifle, runestone magazines, and 2 pair of rune-capped jars. All of the defensive materials somehow didn't make the next few trots any easier. She had her yoke of lanterns with her, but couldn't persuade herself to light them. Not yet. The mare knew that she wouldn't need them to find her way here. As the mare slowly trudged down the hilltop from the tethered Harmony, the flurrying wind spread the snow before her, revealing a pair of dried-up riverbeds converging before a series of multicolored houses, collapsed buildings with their thatched roofs long blown off. The skeletons of various oak trees lurched into view, and finally, a deathly, slumbering village bled forth from the gray expanse. One lone sign by a snow-laden path, bent at an odd angle, shuddered from the proximity of the Pegasus's treading hooves. The powdery ash that had collected on its surface fell off, revealing the lonesome words. "Welcome to Ponyville, sanctum of earth ponies. Population 1056.